Thanks for coming out. You cannot hear me through this mic because it's not going through the system. So you don't have to say, can't hear you. I know you can't. So this is the last event I have here. So I'm going to push my voice and make sure you can all hear me. I don't have to save it anymore for a few weeks. So this is going into the recording, and that's why. Why is he wearing one? And it's not making any difference. Now we know. Those of you just arriving, this is the Scientology class. Are you in the right room? That ought to be good for a lawsuit. Not saying there's anything wrong with it. We are going to look at so much stuff today, and especially because many of you have never trained with me and Chris before, we really believe in over-delivering. We want to give you more stuff today than you can possibly use, and we're going to focus around power inductions. And by power inductions, many of these that you'll see are original to me over the years. These are ways you can get into the unconscious super fast, even if you have a hyper-analytical subject you're working with. You know, if you've been stuck with that damnable progressive muscle relaxation induction where you essentially read at the person. I mean, scripts are great to learn from, but if you're using that to get people in trance, you're wasting your time because you can zone them through the floor usually in a matter of seconds. We'll show you the difference between rapid inductions that rely upon some degree of leverage to get in, and we will look at the creation of catalepsy, which is crucial for this, going right back to the 1880s and still very powerful. And we'll look at PGO spikes. So you're using the neurology of firing off a spike in the brain from the pons, the geniculate body, and the occiput. And by doing this, you have a super highway of neurological fibers that will get someone in a trance in less than 1 second, which is always fun. So we'll get to that a bit later in the day. The first thing I would like to do is get everybody in the zone. And in order to get you in the zone, we need to put each of you in an immensely powerful ego state, a subpersonality apart from NLP. We want your strongest learning state to be executive, to be attached to your prefrontal cortex, so you get so much from this. And I've modeled my training methods come from my two mentors, the late great Derek Balmer, University of Toronto, and John Grinder, the co-founder of NLP, who I got so much stuff from him. So they both taught me to keep you entertained consciously so you don't get bored, and to teach you unconsciously at the same time. I will intentionally install loops in your brain that will close in this class. Some will close later this weekend. Some will not close for several months or even years. And you'll look back and go, "Oh, you bastard," which is really That's as bad as my language gets, so have no fear. This is not Carl Smith's class. We had Carl Smith in Toronto told me could not swear. Well, you cannot, Carl. You cannot. Toronto is very conservative. You can't swear. You could see it just bottling up. By halfway through the second day, it was just unstoppable. Some of you know exactly what I mean. This torrent of profanity, and it's still hovering over the CN Tower to this day. So let's begin. Let's get you in the zone. Here's how we're going to do it. I'd like you all to put down whatever is in your hands. Stand up if at all possible. And you will notice on the back of your non-dominant hand, there is a channel between the little finger, also known as the baby finger, and the ear cleaning finger, and next to it, the finger of matrimony. And between the ring finger and the baby finger, there's a channel between the fourth and fifth metacarpals on the back of your hand. You'll find two fingertips fit just nicely there, provided you're using the opposite hand. Otherwise, it keeps moving when you try to get there. That was way more brilliant than the laughter deserves. Now, so what I want you to do is you're going to tap there firmly, or you can do it flat. You don't have to believe what you're saying. I just want you to say this as though you believe it. All right? Pretend you believe it, and then pretend you're not pretending anymore. So here we go. Tapping and say all these things as though you mean it. I am in the zone.
I'm in the zone.
My brain is a learning machine.
My brain is a learning machine.
I am an awesome hypnotist.
I am an awesome hypnotist.
All these people are my friends.
All these people are my friends.
And we're all learning together.
We're all learning together.
And this is awesome.
And this is awesome.
And I'm awesome.
You're awesome.
And I didn't just join a cult. Okay, press your ring finger with your thumb, look at it, and say, awesome!
Awesome!
Have a seat. Flawlessly done. That is ridiculously one of the most powerful techniques you can use to get in the zone quickly. I was telling the class yesterday that when I used to do stage stuff, I retired last year after almost 45 years on the road. And I did Western University at London, Ontario, which is 2 hours west of Toronto. And it used to be 6,000 kids in the audience for this show. And huge rear projection screens. I said I had more security than Black Sabbath. It was just fantastic. But I did that Frosh Week 44 years in a row. And the kids who saw me when I was first there were in their 60s. They're 18 when they saw me. And to perform for kids who are 18 years old when you're closer to 70 than 60, it's a challenge. And so I would always go to the dressing room and do this and get in the frickin' zone. And then I would hit the stage like AC/DC, and it was just fantastic. When you need to get in the zone, this is your best friend. Say it as though you mean it. Do a shopping list of every trait you want to be executive at that time, and your unconscious mind will provide the one of your 50 to 150 ego states that will best do that job, and you'll feel amazing. Then what you do is when you feel that after 30 to 45 seconds, you fire your awesome anchor. Look at it, press, and say awesome, and you are anchoring that in. And then keep using this. So you're at a concert, you're having a great time, you realize you're having a great time. Set your awesome anchor again. Add that concert feeling. You've had a great discussion with some friends, a fun evening. Fire your awesome anchor. You hear a comedian say something that just kills you with laughter. Fire the awesome anchor. Keep piling more and more powerful states on it. And then that becomes your instant way of getting out of a bad state. Use it. It absolutely works. When Igor Ledochowski, a year and a bit ago, interviewed me, we did 5 hours of interviews. And he wanted to know all the stuff I was doing. He said, give me a takeaway for my students, and I gave him this. And he freaking loves it. I stumbled on this from an obscure book of Chinese medicine, realizes it adapts well to NLP, and began using it. Some of you heard me say this yesterday, but it's such a great little thing, I'll tell you anyway. I was a therapist until 2000, and I retired because we lost our space January 1st. And they threw us all out, including the lawyers, which isn't easy to do. And they turned it into a Sylvan Learning Center, which was good. And I had a Starbucks across the street. We were right on Lake Ontario in Toronto. It was a beautiful location. And I shared with a physical therapist this office. Great place. But we didn't have it anymore, so I retired. My wife said, are you going to get more space? And I said, no, I'm mostly just doing things like this now, teaching and doing the online stuff and working with teaching students. And so I said, I'm retiring. In 2004, I got an email that lured me out of retirement as a therapist. I got an email from an Australian multimillionaire rock star from a band you've probably heard of. And this guy said he had something called depersonalization syndrome. I didn't know what it was. I had to look it up in my books. And it was someone who has taken so many drugs, smoked so much dope, that they are now flatlined. They have no kinesthetic sense anymore, and there's no highs and there's no lows, everything. He said he just felt like he was watching a particularly bland movie as he was dissociated from his own life. That's horrible. And he said, I want to fly you here to fix this. Well, right away I knew it had to be a practical joke. First of all, no multimillionaire rock star contacts a guy in the Toronto area to come and fix something. So I realized it was one of my friends, because we all do ridiculous practical jokes on each other. They don't typically do them on me anymore because I operate on the principle of thousandfold retaliation. And since I'm self-employed, accountable to no human being, and have tons of time, my retaliations are just nightmares with multiple waves of response. Anyway, that being said, I waited for 3 days without responding to this guy. I just said, yeah, I'll think about it. And I waited to see which one of my friends would give away that it was him who set this joke up. And I was waiting for someone to say something like, oh, get any interesting emails lately, Mike? Ha ha, you! But nothing was said at any point. And then I had named a ridiculous fee I wanted, and I want business class flight from Toronto into Brisbane. And 3 days later, TD Canada Trust, Toronto Dominion Canada Trust, my bank phoned me, and they said, Mr. Mandel, your business account, there's just been a large transfer of electronic funds from Australia. I went, what the And then the plane ticket arrived, and I realized it was real. So I'd get my books out and study about depersonalization syndrome. And I listened to yeah, I'll do it. Whoops, minor mistake. So anyway, so this is how it ties into the hand thing. So I met with this guy. We met for a full week. And he sent a yellow and black Lotus to the airport to pick me up. I had this thing for a week. I mean, it's just insane. Wonderful time. And business class was terrific for that flight. So we're doing the work on the Monday, and I'm sort of feeling around. I brought textbooks with me. I couldn't get in. I could not even get into his brain with hypnosis at all. And honestly, I mean, I've hypnotized well over 100,000 people. I've been doing it since I was 12 years old, and professionally since I was 21. And like I said, I'm closer to 70 than 60. I couldn't get in, and this was odd. And I was using NLP and NLP New Code and Timeline, and nothing was working. And I finally got in and cracked this all open with the tapping. And this one made the huge difference for him, because this rock star who's a millionaire on this gorgeous beach, he's afraid of women. He said he'd lost his mojo. He just lost his confidence with women. Women were climbing in the windows to get to this guy. He lost his confidence. I said, here's what I want you to do. Stand up and start tapping here like this. He said, I don't believe in that stuff. I said, that's okay, neither do I. Stand up. So, I don't believe it, just it works, all right? Just work. So he starts tapping like this. And I said, say this as though you mean it. I'm confident around women. I always stated in the positive, right? I'm confident around women. He goes, well, I'm confident around women? I said, no, say it like you mean it. He goes, well, I'm confident around women, Mike. I said, say it like you really mean it. I'm really confident around women, Mike. I said, say I'm a swinging dick. He goes, I'm a swinging dick. And then you see it. He goes, I'm a swinging dick. You see this? Well, you couldn't see it. That's not quite what I meant, but you could see the installation. Did not check any further than that. And so anyway, we go outside, and this new ego state is executive, this confident, sort of like an Australian James Bond is suddenly executive. We go out the front door, and his personal assistant said, we're going for lunch, and she said, how's the therapy going? He says, I'm a swinging dick. So that was wonderful. So feel free to use this with alarming frequency. We're going to give a bit of a foundation to set this up. And so the wonderful thing about Hypnothoughts, one of the amazing wonderful things about Hypnothoughts is just this. It's the incredible diversity of techniques and belief systems and modalities that we use. Every time I come here, I go home with a bunch of new stuff I've learned. I look for those key distinctions where, oh, shoot, that's amazing. And take that stuff home and learn from the best. And so I'd like to do a bit of a persuasion here and ask you to recognize that there'll be times in your life where your unconscious mind can note that something is so specifically perfect for you that you'll make that your takeaway. Let your unconscious do an internal search all the time that I'm teaching you today and find those key distinctions that will transform your life and someone else's. Let that happen unconsciously. And so if we were to look at hypnosis as a traditional model, we would see something along the lines of hypnotist does action to subject equals trance, whatever that is. People get into a lot of discussion about trance versus hypnosis and emerging versus awakening. I used to do all that. I don't care about it anymore. I'm only looking for an outcome. If I can leave the client feeling better, their problems are gone, they're happy, then who cares how we got there? It really doesn't matter, right? I used to sniff and smell underneath my watch to break depressive states. It was fantastic. Woman sitting there, she had 5 open heart surgeries. She was in a depression and anxiety that had developed because she was afraid that she would have a heart attack. They had her on 2 blood thinners. And she said, I'm nervous and depressed all the time. I said, that's fantastic. She went, what? I said, it's hard to be depressed all the time. That's an accomplishment. She goes, oh, I guess it is, isn't it? She's getting proud of her depression. Bottom line was, I kept letting her get into her depressive state by explaining it to me. And every time she did, I did strange stuff that doesn't belong in a therapeutic session. Like she'd be talking, and I go, yeah. And she went, what did you just do? I hide the watch behind my back. Nothing. Like a kid hiding pornography or something. Nothing. She said, you're smelling under your watch. No, I'm not. Just lie. Because I just want her to feel better, right? And then I said, tell me about your problem. She goes back into it. Oh, she's back in that say, oh, it's horrible. Our son made our lives a living hell, and he was kicked out of school, and the police picked him up. I did a really good one. I half stood up behind my desk. She said, you're smelling under your watch. I said, I am not. I said, look at these certificates. Why would I do that? She said, I guess you wouldn't. I said, that's right. I said, tell me about your problem. And she's trying to get back into it again. And I went over to the wall socket. It used to end with that. You have a wall socket. There, I'll draw it here for you. I'm only putting 2 prongs because the flip chart isn't grounded. Brilliant. Kill myself. It's fantastic. Okay, so now she's telling me all about her problems. I start moving towards the wall socket. And she's watching to see if I go for the watch, so I keep my left hand fairly far from my face. And she said, what are you doing now? I said, keep telling me about the problem. She's trying. And I went, here. She went nuts, to use the medical term. Started freaking on me, yelling at me. This is ridiculous. This is humiliating. Is there a hidden camera? Am I going to be on YouTube next week or something? Dr. Rosen said you could help me. This is ridiculous. I said, sit down and tell me about your depression. She said, no, you're going to start smelling stuff. I said, I won't. I won't. Promise. I said, promise I won't smell anything. She said, sits down. Well, that son, he would too. And I watched, she's doing a transderivational search. Her eyes go all over. And she said, that's weird. It appears to me I said, gone? She went, yeah. Cha-ching. Checked in with her about 6 months later. She's still fine. A year after that, she's still fine. What was happening was she was running a set of neural pathways that led to a dead end of depression and anxiety. And she ran them so many times they were deeply engraved. And now when she would attempt to get back into that same pathway, she'd see things like, and her brain would go, I'm not going there. I'm not going on that road anymore. So I gave her methods to build in new empowering pathways. So we come at things lots of different ways. So this is one way that as a hypnotist, it is your responsibility to do something, offer some degree of behavior to a subject who will apparently go into a trance. That's the idea. But the thing with this is a cause and effect model. And it really goes back to some of the early experts in the art who were doing some wonderful things with this, like Abbe Faria and Braid and so on. But there's a more effective model. And if you adopt this next one, you'll find that half of your difficult subjects will immediately disappear. It's the most remarkable thing. And the other model is the Ericksonian model. It's this: hypnotist, subject. Hypnotist speaks, does action, whatever. Subject responds with communication. Trance is created between them. As Richard Bandler so adroitly said, in order to get someone into a hypnotic state, you have to bring them out of the trance they're already in first. And so this generates a trance between the two of you, what Stephen Gilligan calls the cooperation principle in Ericksonian hypnosis. When you recognize that you are no longer a cause and effect agent attempting to make something happen, and Stephen Blake and I had a great hour-long conversation about all this stuff this morning. Instead, if you adopt the model that you and the subject are in some sort of relationship, a psychodynamic relationship, everything changes, because their behavior might be they twitch a bit or they take deep breaths, and whatever they do, you're monitoring it, and then you're feeding back more information to them. And by putting them in this biofeedback loop, instead of trying to cause something to happen to them, this gets real easy. Now, having said that, my neo-Ericksonian approach is these are not opposites. They're just in different places on a continuum. So at one far end, you'll see extremely direct George Estabrooks, Dave Ellman, Gil Boyne, this kind of in-your-face, powerful paternal hypnosis. Very good, very effective. And at the other end of this continuum, you'll find Milton Erickson's very relaxed, very laid-back stuff where you're just having a conversation and people change. I was on a plane to Boston from Toronto a couple of years ago. One of my students is in Boston. He's an OBGYN, one of my online students. And so we met, we went out, had a couple of glasses of wine. He took me around to see Harvard and Stanford, and it was just fantastic. And the interesting thing about that entire trip that stays in my mind was on the way there on the plane, I always take an aisle seat, just in case you got to commandeer things in an emergency. Hypnotic James Bond, right? So anyway, sitting in the aisle seat, and there's an elderly woman next to me from Ireland, strong accent. She's coming back to Boston where there's a lot of Irish. She used to go there with her husband, who'd been dead now for, I think, 2 to 3 years. She wanted to see Boston again, where she had her best memories with her beloved husband before she passes on. She wasn't sick, and now on the plane, flying there, she had incredible trepidation that she was going to be overwhelmed by grief again, and it would be a bad experience and not a good one. So I didn't switch into Milton Erickson voice, but I said, reminds me of a person I was working with once, and switched into Ericksonian language. So now with the extreme relationship with her, psychodynamic, she begins nodding. I'm offering back her language patterns. Her lower lip size increases, which means that the mandibular angle has opened. She's going into trance and the internal dialogue is turned off. That's one of your most reliable guides. Look at the person's lower lip when they sit down. If it seems more full partway through the session, you've already got them in hypnosis, because that indicates the mouth is opened slightly and the internal dialogue has softened. And I just give her some metaphors, tell her this story. We're getting off the plane, and she says, you know, you're such a nice young man. No one calls me a young man. I said, thank you. She said, would you mind very much if I was to pray for you? I said, fine. She took my hands, and this beautiful Roman Catholic lady, not knowing I'm a Presbyterian elder, Protestant Reformation, Catholicism, So she took my hands and prayed for me in the aisle of this plane. It was a lovely experience. Then she gets her bags, and she's going down to pick up her final baggage, and she said, I don't know what was the matter with me. I'm so looking forward to going to Boston. My husband would love the fact that I'm doing this for him. Everything changed. Now, is it hypnosis? Yes, because it's impossible to have a conversation with someone that is not, to some degree, hypnotic. If I tell you about the cabin we have, the 400 square foot cabin on Bob Lake in Northern Ontario, we have bears and wolves coming through, and it's beautiful. Now, you're all making a picture of it, an internal representation, but it's different for everybody in this room. And you're forced to go inside and attach meaning to the words. And that, of course, is how hypnosis is going to operate. The language itself, working with the depths of your being, drawing from your unconscious mind, working with the constraints of your imagination and all the resources that you have and have installed through your entire life, brought to the fore so that as you begin to access them and as you begin to help other people change easily and effortlessly, all of this happens below the surface without the conscious awareness or monitoring of what's happening. Second vitally important thing about hypnosis is it's the only subject, when you start talking about it, it starts happening. And the third vitally important thing about hypnosis is I'd like all of you to totally forget the first vitally important thing now. That's right, just like that. You all have a lacuna, a gap of about 20 seconds where you can't remember what I was saying. And the more intently you were listening, the bigger the lacuna has gotten. That one back there, whoosh. And that internal disorientation you are noticing now is because your unconscious mind is listening to me. And I built a bridge. But the question is, do you remember amnesia? Amnesia is not forgetting. Amnesia is forgetting that you have forgotten anything like that. But I think it's important for you to be certain, to remember, to forget certain things. Haven't you? Wide awake now. Okay. So clearly, just through the use of language, we can create trance states. So now we look at this again, not as opposite sides of a coin, but how can we function on this continuum and be as direct as necessary and as indirect as possible? See, on a plane, I can't do a PGO spike on a poor elderly woman from Ireland, grab the back of her neck and scream sleep, because they'll come run down the aisle with tasers and shock me for doing this. What have you done to her? So, but I can do this under those circumstances. So let's get some basic guidelines that we should adopt every time we're doing this stuff. I highly recommend a very specific placement of chairs. Honestly, I always put them like this, and I tell my students like this. The reason why is, if you are absolutely face-to-face with someone, it can be too confrontational. I taught courses at the Ontario Police College, and a number of police colleges taught advanced interviewing module and tactical communications and self-defense, a bunch of stuff with cops, and learned a number of these things from them. And one of them is this, the left eye trick. You don't want to left eye somebody by accident. When we, as human beings in Western society, talk to another person, we typically look at their right eye. And we look away, and we make a point, and we look at their right eye again, and we look away. If we instead switch to their left eye, blank our face, and move into their personal space, it sends this incredibly horrible message of domination. It's a convict trick. So let me bore you for a second. Okay, don't do anything weird. I just want you to notice the difference, because I know you're aware of this. Step forward for a bit here. Ken, right? Yep. Excellent. Turn this for them. Right, so the people in the cheaper seats can see it. There we are. Okay. So, Ken, if we're in a conversation, I'm just looking at this eye like this, and it feels normal, right? And now you're doing the monkey dance. You're being the mean guy, so you start all this, and you're trying, yeah, all right. Sure. And so I want him to shut down. So I'm talking this, and I'll say, "I told you." Do you feel the difference as I invade the space? It is totally weird. Thank you. I just want to show you how to do it. In fact, I practice. Whenever I get a haircut, the way I practice it to make sure it's short enough, this is a little bit long now, is I look in the mirror and I say, "You got a problem. I'm talking to you." And if I can't scare myself, my hair isn't short enough yet. Because we tell our jiu-jitsu students, never fight a Scot. Because if you do, even if you win, you're going to the emergency ward. It's just part of it. Now, if you put your chair facing someone head on doing hypnosis, and if you're making a lot of eye contact, and if they have somnambulistic trance and their eyes are open, you might left eye them. And you can make them feel very, very uncomfortable. I don't recommend you left-eye people in the street because, as we say in Britain, you've got to have the bottle. If you haven't got the bottle to follow it up, it can go really high, really fast. Did any of you see the film Usual Suspects? Great film, isn't it? There's a scene in there, whoever wrote that knew this technique because McManus and Hockney are in the police lockup. Two convicts are trying to intimidate each other. And they're left-eyeing each other from 2 inches away, just like this. Their left eyes in contact. Whoever wrote it knew what he was doing. So you avoid that right away by you put your chairs on an angle like this. Now, I am close enough that, heaven forbid, something unecological happens and the person begins to spill out of the chair, I can catch him or her. But I'm going to make sure they maintain their ecology anyway. But it's easier to do. Some people like them like this. I don't, for the reason I just said. If they do a tumble, the only way I can catch them is by doing a break fall and going over with them. It's not my idea. So this is a great position. You can get all the work done. You can touch their hand or their shoulder without violating their personal space. And you can avoid what Chris Thompson calls crotch snuggling. Now,
Correct.
in one of our classes, would you be willing to demonstrate this?
No,
Okay.
I would not.
Thank you.
No, yeah.
Because I just realized they'd be demoing it on me. It's somebody in our class in Toronto not that long ago, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, what happened is...
All right, you're going to do it.
I'll just mention it because
You're
you're
gonna
all
do
in
it, aren't
training
you?
environments, and we are going to probably do a bit of work in this room, so avoid it. Give yourself sufficient space. When people are in a loud practice environment like a classroom, what'll happen is they'll get really close, and they have to talk loud, and they're like overlapping the other person's legs with their crotch, and it just gets weird.
Thanks
So,
for not doing it.
space.
Thank
There
you,
go.
buddy. Thank you. So yeah, give people a personal space. You don't want to be so close that you're breathing on the person. You know, that's really uncomfortable and weird. We actually saw one hypnosis book and it said, if the person does not awaken, prop his eyelids open and point an electric fan at his eyes. Now here's my freaking question. How do you prop somebody's eyes open? It's not like a Clockwork Orange or something horrible. You know, you got those things to hold. It amazes me, some of the stuff in print. One book actually says this. When you bring your subject out of hypnosis, you should immediately make eye contact, hold the person's shoulder, and say, "Are you sure you're all right?" Great. That's just fantastic. So anyway, there's your chair positioning. I think this is a really good way to do it. That way you're both aligned together to a common point. There's no confrontation between the two of you, but you're not just side by side either. Now, if you start to look at this, one of the things you can set up immediately, which I love, is if you're going to do any kind of induction, it's perfect to set up a double bind. Now, a double bind offers only two alternatives, either one of which will get you exactly what you want. So the key is to make sure that you've written your double bind in advance sufficiently early that you'll get the right response. A double bind is something like this. Erickson would say, would you rather go into a trance quickly or slowly? Well, the implication is, whichever one you pick, you've agreed to go into a trance and you've accepted a tacit hypnotic contract to do so. But you can use this in all sorts of ways. My wife comes from a family where they do not drink enough water. And the reason I'm telling you to do double binds is this makes your work way easier. They don't drink enough water. Her father had kidney stones. Back in the days when they couldn't break them up with shock waves, they used to open you right up with enough room to throw a football around in there. And I was worried about her developing kidney stones, and I kept saying, you got to drink more water, you got to drink more water. I'm not thirsty. Okay. Honey, but if Mr. Science, shut up. Not interested, I'm not thirsty. Okay. So one day she's sitting reading the paper, and I came in and said, honey, would you rather have a hot drink now or a cold drink later? Double bind. She went, what? I said, would you rather have a hot drink now or a cold drink later? She said, I guess a hot drink now. I said, that's right. Brought her a big cup of herbal tea with 2 tea bags in. I said, I'll bring you that cold drink later that you wanted. She went, okay. So about an hour later, I brought her a bottle of water. I went, here you do. She drank about half and went, what did you just do? It's a powerful technique. It's an amazing thing. I got a guy from another hypnosis school with this. I'm not going to say his name. I usually do, but I won't because this is recorded. And it's not somebody who's here. But another hypnosis group was coming to Toronto doing a weekend-long training. And Chris and I like to see what other people are doing, get some pointers, maybe make some friends. I went and took this training, but this is mid-90s, this is a long time ago. But I wrote down on the intake sheet, no previous experience in hypnosis. Meanwhile, I had my Hypno-Boy costume hidden underneath. And so I went into the class, and the instructor had 19 of us, and he said, okay, here's these sheets, and he talked about all these, reading the stuff at everyone and handed it. He said, okay, now everyone has to do hypnosis. And I was like, oh, no. They're like, how are we going to do this? We have to read these things. And he says, yeah, take a sheet. Oh, there's 19 of you. Somebody has to sit this out. I went, I'll hypnotize you. He said, you want to hypnotize me? Yes. He said, okay. So we went up to the front. We had a couple of chairs. This was most of the induction. He starts to hand me a script. I said, do I need to do it with a script, or can I do it a different way? He said, well, if you think you can handle it. I said, I think I might be able to manage, yeah. I said, would you rather have the hypnosis chair or the trance chair? He said, what? I said, would you prefer the hypnosis chair, or would you rather have the trance chair? He said, I'll take the hypnosis chair. I said, that's right. Got blinking in unison. When zoned this poor guy out so fast, he got he had leg catalepsy. He couldn't stand up. Gave him time distortion, amnesia. He left by the wrong room door. He went out into a service hallway. I was like, yes. Now, double bind sets people up. It's fantastic. Offer double binds all the time. You'll hear great salespeople will do this intuitively. They'll say, oh, do you want to close the deal now, or should we wait until after lunch? Well, I can't have lunch. I haven't got time. I guess we'll close the deal now. See, when we're presented with only two alternatives, we tend to stop looking for alternatives. Do you want this or this? Well, what about this? Or this, or this, or this? We stop. My wife did the most clever double bind I've ever heard in my life. She worked at a company called Sheridan Nurseries in Toronto. Plants, not babies. And liked to do it. We called it a jobby, a hobby job, kept her out of the street gangs. And so she'd be there working, and she's very forward and in your face. She has a blog called The Forthright One. Check it out. You'll get a sense of what she's like. And so she just says what she thinks. What you get is the real deal. And her boss, who was an Enneagram 9, was really freaked out by her, and she got the sense that she was going to be fired. She just had this intuition. So you know what she did? It was a time when they were low on personnel, and she still thought they were going to fire her. So she immediately went in and quit. And she said, look, I don't need the job anymore. And they said, what, you're quitting? She said, yeah, right now. But I know you still need help here. So I'll keep coming in, and you can keep paying me until you get somebody else. And they went, okay. So they didn't have to change anything. But then somebody would come in, oh, do you know where the rhododendrons are? Sorry, I don't work here. Oh, okay, fine, that's right. But she kept showing up, and they kept paying her. I mean, it was just the most absolutely true, most amazing thing. So make sure you're using your double binds. Offer double binds to people. This clears some space. We're going to do one more space clearing thing, and then I'm going to give you the first induction. So the space clearing, let's look at yes sets and compliance sets. Yes sets are Milton Erickson's, they were his favorite way of reducing supposed resistance with a subject. All you have to do is get the person saying yes or agreeing with you, even internally, even nodding yes 3 to 5 times. And this starts to remove resistance. So you'll see this, you get salespeople are trying to sell cable for your house or, dishes or something. They come to the door and they say, oh, hi, do you live here? No, I always wear pajamas when I break into somebody else's house. You think, right? Yes, I live here, Clem Fandango. I live here. It's like, well, it's a nice day, isn't it? Yes, it's a nice day here. And you're probably wondering what I'm doing here, aren't you? No, not anymore. You're setting up a yes set to try to sell me something. Oh, okay. It's just what we're told to do. So when you are saying yes 3 to 5 times, it is extremely difficult to begin to reverse and start going the other way. And yes set gets rid of some of the resistance immediately, whereupon switching to different color, keep the right brain involved, whereupon we move into the lovely compliance set. Compliance set is you get the person to do something to set up obedience momentum without questioning it. So once you've got them internally saying yes, now you get them responding to what you tell them to do. And this builds the momentum into trance very quickly. It can be as simple as put your feet flat on the floor. They do. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. There's your compliance set. They've just done 3 things that you've asked them to do. And now when you tell them to go into a deep trance, they typically will, because they're already motivated in that direction. By the way, we will do questions today too, because I want to make sure that you're getting something you can take home with you. So when you do a compliance set, I recommend you follow a yes set. Do the yes set first, then do the compliance set. It's remarkably powerful. And sometimes, very, very rarely, you will have to do a no set. I think I've only used a no set maybe twice in my life. But a no set, actually, goes in front of the yes set if you're going to use it. Here's how you use it. You allow the person to say no and discharge their resistance. You give them a legitimate way of doing it. I had a teenage kid brought in by his parents, gone through all kinds of problems, back into crime all the time, and he wasn't at threshold. It was probably a waste of time. And anyway, he came into the class, into the room where we were working, and I said, "You don't want to be here, do you?" Okay, so we're setting it up. He goes, "No." And "You don't think it's going to work, do you?" "No, I don't." And I bet nothing has worked in the past, has it? "No, it hasn't." "But we are here, aren't we?" "Yes." "And your parents are paying me a lot of money, right?" "Yes." "So we might as well do something, right?" "Yes." "Sit in that chair, put your hands in your lap, take a deep breath, eyes closed now." So you use the no set to depotentiate resistance. You segue into a yes set and then into a compliance set. And if you do it smoothly, it's seamless and nobody will hear it coming. The dark side of this, the black magic of this is horribly the method used to get women into the sex industry. Women who have no intention of going there. And it can be as simple as you're coming in for a photographic session or something. Could you just undo one more button here? It'll just look cute and sexy in the picture. The compliance set starts to build. And then finally the poor woman is looking back at the end of the day going, how the hell did this happen? Well, in tiny increments. Sliced bologna, you take a little bit more, and then when you look back and see how much is gone. So watch for the use of this. It's intriguing to me how much of this is being used all the time. You know, we are being bombarded by so much hypnotic information on a daily basis. I was blessed to be able to lecture at Department of Defense College in Toronto for the Canadian government. They had NATO troops there from all over Europe, and I was teaching them on propaganda and how hypnotic propaganda works, and they were all about this stuff. And I came home from it. And my wife said, "How did it go?" I said, "Oh, we're talking about the stuff." And I told them how television is the most ubiquitous transducer in the world. You're more liable to believe something you hear than something you read, whether it's on the web or in a book, because if you hear it, you can't stop it to evaluate it and reread it and think about it and bring your critical faculty to play. And they use data stream, and they'll go faster than usual when they want to sell you something. It's not because they're trying to fit it all in the commercial. It's because they're bypassing your critical faculty intentionally. And then you're more liable to believe something you see on television than something you hear on the radio, because the locus of the focus is the screen. Think of the last movie you watched on Netflix or whatever. All you remember is the movie. You don't remember the physical television or the carpet or the rubber plant in the corner or the stairs. All that's gone. Your brain has hypnotically contracted to that locus. If you don't know what the product is they're selling, it's you. And so I told them this and how this was the biggest transducer. It works so well. And my wife said, "Well, you're always talking against television. How come we watch so much of it?" Ouch. She said, "Look, I got an idea." I said, "Okay, you're making me nervous already." She said, "What we're going to do is let's shut the TV off for a while and get away from its hypnotic power." I said, "Well, what the hell's a while?" And she said, 30 days. 30 days? Are you trying to kill me? Like, I've got a life, you know. So we got rid of the cable. For 30 days. There was no way of watching TV at all. And do you know that was almost 11 years ago? We never put it back on. And we taught more. We cooked. I learned to cook. Learned all kinds of new subjects. We were outdoors in the fresh air more. Life has slowed down and feels better. It doesn't feel hectic. Now, I'm not telling you that you should consider doing something like this. I would never say this will change your life. But do you know, we say this in our Brain Software podcast, which if you're not listening to, you need to. There's 131 online, still free. We give all our stuff out for free. But you think about it. If you turn off your television just 1 hour a day, one fewer hour a day than you typically watch, in 1 year, you get more than 9 40-hour weeks of spare time. What could you learn in 9 40-hour work weeks? You could learn another language. You could take up an entirely new subject. You could make your hypnosis even more stellar. Just saying.